Perfect. So, as we start gearing up for lobby day and doing constituent meetings, there's one thing I always like to tell people that I always want you to do when you meet your legislator. And that is, tell your personal story, your personal healthcare story. So they're going to hear the facts and figures, and those are important. Absolutely. They're going to hear those facts and figures from every person that comes, to lobby them. But what they really need to hear, and what they can't really argue with either, is your personal experience with the healthcare system. And so let me, so I'm going to introduce my intern who's just gone through our Tell Your Healthcare Story training. This is going to be the story she tells her legislator, Jay Livingstone, and Senator Lydia Edwards. So let me introduce to you Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kate. Yeah, as Stephanie mentioned, I'm an intern at Mass Care. And yeah, here's my story. 4 years ago, my life changed. I remember the day like it was yesterday, as I began screaming blood-curdling cries as I was suddenly flooded with pain. My finger was stuck in a bent position, and I knew something had gone terribly wrong. Yet after assessing the situation and knowing the costs of going to the ER, x-rays, and doctor's appointments, I decided it was best if I splinted my finger myself. I ran to a drugstore and bought a $5 splint, keeping it straight and hoping to fix what I thought to be a strain. Yet the pain didn't subside, and my finger quickly started to turn purple and swell. Finally, after several days, I went to urgent care and got an x-ray. They confirmed my fears. My finger was broken, and because of the severity of the break, I needed to see a specialist. After having to deal with the brutal reality of scheduling an appointment, I finally learned that my finger was meant to be healed at a curve, not by keeping it straight. Because of the damage I had done by keeping my finger straight for many days, this meant I would require many more appointments with this specialist, more x-rays, and extensive occupational therapy. Even with my so-called good insurance, the bill racked up to be thousands of dollars. Now, after several years, I still have pain in this finger, which has now spread to other issues in my hands, and I am continuing to have to see a doctor to try to find relief. I have been in pain for so many years because of a single decision, to not go to urgent care immediately because of fear of the costs. I wish my experiences in the healthcare system were unique, but unfortunately, this is a problem that many have to face. It is estimated that 20% of people in the United States are dealing with chronic pain, and our healthcare system's norms of long wait times for appointments, expensive visits, and high prescription costs only further promotes this. Knowing this, I decided to join the Medicare for All movement, fighting to stop this cycle of mistreatment and exploitation of American citizens. We should not have to decide between spending money and getting healthcare. Yet people, especially lower income BIPOC people, are unable to get the healthcare they need and deserve due to cost barriers. This system should no longer force people to be in pain, be ill, or be at risk for diseases, insured or not. Single-payer healthcare is the way to ensure that everyone, regardless of income and employment status, are able to get medical treatment. Yeah, that's my story. Thank you for letting me share.
Okay, dear.
Stephanie, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Kate, for sharing that story. If people just want to respond in the chat how that story made them feel, I would love to hear your thoughts. Mad, sad, frustrating. Yep. Yep, sad, and a good story to tell legislators. Really angry, yep. Yeah, everyone fears the cost, so sad. Yep. Unacceptable. We shouldn't have to decide between spending money and getting health care is really good. Yep. Perfectly said. Shame on us, yes. Yep. Saw this all the time as a case manager in the emergency department. That is really, really sad. I like that this was a minor health issue that ballooned into something bigger because of cost. Yep. Not unique and horrible, exactly. But what I really loved about Kate's story, as infuriating as it was, is that she chose to get involved and try to change the system because of her experience, right? She wasn't a passive victim of the healthcare system. She's somebody like all of you here today who came here to organize. And that's, the story that we're going to be telling people, that we can actually change the healthcare situation here in America, here in Massachusetts, through our own organizing. All right, so now I would like, let's see, I think I have to stop the share. Now I'm going to have Ben Day, who was formerly executive director of Medicare back in the day, oversaw many milestones in our movement, gave a little bit of a history of the Medicare for All movement. So let me get the screen back up. Oops. Sorry, full screen percent. Okay.
Oh, we get to phase in the different historical periods.
Yes.
Fancy. All right. So this is a very annotated version of kind of Medicare for All / universal healthcare history in Massachusetts. And I'll be skipping over lots of important things that happened, but the really big broad strokes, a lot of people don't realize that there actually was a universal healthcare bill passed, not Medicare for All, but passed in under Dukakis in the late 1980s. And it was actually similar to the failed Clinton National Health Reform Bill, in that it would have basically required employers to cover their workers or pay a fine, and then anyone who was uninsured would get subsidized healthcare or free healthcare, sort of a combo thing like that. But and this is something that's been a lesson for me for many years afterwards. They had a delayed implementation plan, so it wasn't supposed to be implemented for, I think, 4 years, and then they kept delaying it and delaying it and delaying it. And eventually, of course, there was a Republican governor who was implemented, and the legislature lost their stomach for implementing it, so it never actually came to pass. All right, next up, another maybe surprising fact to some folks, the organization Healthcare for All, which today is, I would describe as kind of a centrist organization. They have a great helpline for patients who need help. They advocate for expanding access to care, but they get a lot of their money from the health insurance industry, the healthcare industry. So they generally do not advocate for Medicare for All or anything relating to cost control. But before they sold their soul to the healthcare industry, Healthcare for All used to file Medicare for All language, single payer legislation. And they were actually the first organization before Medicare was even created to file a single payer bill in the Massachusetts legislature. But it was not to last long. They did fairly quickly sell their soul. And that is when the need for a real sort of single payer healthcare organization arose. Medicare was actually originally a committee of Jobs with Justice, which is kind of a community labor organization. And they had a Medicare for All or a single payer healthcare committee. And Medicare, that committee decided it actually needed to be its own nonprofit organization, and it spun off into Medicare. Then there was a binding healthcare ballot initiative in 2000. It was not quite a universal healthcare ballot initiative, and it was very complicated. I don't even really know all the ins and outs of it. It had part of kind of trying to address managed care organizations, part trying to establish something approaching universal healthcare. The ballot initiative was defeated very, very narrowly. I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was something like, 52-48, or the 50s versus the 40s. But out of that, shortly after that.
Okay.
And I should also mention that at that moment when the 2000 ballot initiative was on, I think that we hit almost a majority of legislators in supporting the single payer healthcare legislation in the legislature. Just having that on the ballot put intense pressure on legislators to support Medicare for all. One thing that did come out of it, though, was not that long afterwards, a couple of years later, single payer activists got the state legislature to finance a economic study into what the impacts would be of implementing single payer healthcare in Massachusetts. The report itself was not as favorable to single payer as it should be. There were some problems and some gaps in the report. But again, the intrigue behind that is a whole history in and of itself. All of these have little histories of themselves. So next up, this was actually right about when I was hired at MassCare. I was hired shortly after, it wasn't called Romney Care at the time, but it's called Romney Care now. The Massachusetts Health Reform was passed in 2006. This is what eventually became the model for the Affordable Care Act nationally. But again, a story that not everyone might know, there had been a 3-year campaign to get the right to healthcare added to the Massachusetts Constitution. Massachusetts was the first state in the country to make public education a right and to actually have that written into its constitution. So a big coalition of grassroots organizations and unions got together to try and make healthcare right in the Constitution, modeled on that right to public education using very similar language. And the idea was that the legislature would then be forced to implement a universal healthcare plan to protect that right. And that would then create a major opening opportunity to make sure that protecting that right was done through a Medicare for all system, which is really the only way you can guarantee universal healthcare affordably anyway. And again, the twists and turns of this campaign are just truly crazy. This 3-year campaign, they collected all the signatures they needed to get this question on the ballot to make healthcare right. And then to get a constitutional question on the ballot, you need to pass, not only collect signatures, you then need to get 50 votes at 2 consecutive constitutional conventions. The Constitutional Convention happens every 2 years. It's just kind of the House and the Senate merged together. Only needing 50 votes sounds easy because there's 200 legislators. You need basically a fourth of them. The first Constitutional Convention, they got well over 100 legislators approved the question to go onto the ballot. But then right when it was about to come up for the second Constitutional Convention, where it would actually go onto the ballot, that is when Romney Care was being passed and implemented. And obviously, if you also enacted a right to healthcare in the Massachusetts Constitution, that Romney Care does not guarantee healthcare as a right, and they would have had to scrap the whole thing and go back to the drawing board. So the legislature did some truly messed up things to keep it off the ballot. They decided to send it to study, and it takes 101 votes to get a question pulled back from study, not the 50 votes that you're supposed to need to get the question on the ballot. And the campaign actually sued the legislature in the Supreme Court and won. The Supreme Court said that it's illegal to send something to study and keep it from getting its 50 votes. But they also said they couldn't do anything about it without violating the separation of powers between the judiciary and the legislature. So that ballot initiative was killed as part of the Romney Care kind of political deal. And we all got pissed drunk that week. It was really depressing. A lot of 3 years of organizing went into that. Something that many of you are probably familiar with now, since this has become a major tactic of MassCare. For many years, Massachusetts is actually very unique in having the ability to put non-binding ballot questions on at the state representative or state Senate district. You can get on without needing 1 million signatures, and you can have a real direct impact saying, does the constituency of a particular rep district or Senate district want their rep or their senator to do something, including supporting Medicare for all. So when I was at MassCare, we had 2 rounds of this where we kind of scaled up and did quite a few districts in just one election cycle. I think we did 8 districts in 2008, and then we did 10 in 2010. Stephanie has scaled on our scaling, and we are now did quite a bit more this last around this last election cycle. And I think it's a really effective tactic. But one thing we learned back in 2008, 2010 is that it's not enough to just get the question on the ballot and to even pass it. You really need to have a follow-up campaign to pressure the legislature after they have had a ballot question passed in their district. So that's kind of where a lot of us are at right now, including me in my district, where my rep is not on board the Medicare for All bill, but we passed a ballot initiative here with massive support, and we're working on getting her on board now. All right, so I spoiled the ending here, but we've scaled up kind of this tactic that we can only do here in Massachusetts and almost in no other state.
All right, thank you, Ben.
My pleasure.
Thank you for that history. A lot of it very infuriating, but also super hopeful. I think that, we're still here. And actually last session, we had a lot more co-sponsors than we've had in a long time. So, in the 2000 period, there was like really a huge push for Medicare for all. And we got almost to the halfway mark. But then I think the ACA and Romney Care really took the wind out of the sails of the Medicare for All movement for a little while. But then Bernie sort of put it back on, the menu in a really, really big way. He forced the national news media to actually say the words Medicare for All and include it in the debate. And I think we've seen that over the last 7 or so years that every year, every session in the state house, we've been increasing how much support we have. So for example, last session, this is our co-sponsors in the House, we had over 40%. I think the number was 65 reps. And in the Senate, we had 17 senators. So again, about just over 40% of both chambers. So we are absolutely, I think, Massachusetts, the state of Massachusetts, we're one of 3 states, we're Massachusetts, New York, and California that have really like a robust, serious Medicare for All movement. Can everyone see my slides? Good. Okay. Really paranoid about that. Oh, and then the other thing that I wanted to also mention was that this session, 2023 session, we improved our coalition that's in support of the Medicare for All bill by, I think, about 20 or 25%. We brought on a number of DTCs, Democratic Town Committees, Democratic City Committees, and unions that support Medicare for All this session that did not support it last session, notably 1199, a lot of the DTCs that you see here, Boston Teachers Union, and many more in this list that have now come on board. And I think that's largely due to the raising of the consciousness through the ballot question. So to go back to talk a little bit about like what's going on in New York and California. California, there was support from the governor, which is amazing because he actually ran on and single payer was in his platform. Another thing that the California that they have been doing, and actually this has been led by health advocates and spearheaded also by Governor Newsom, is expanding healthcare for undocumented people. So now undocumented low-income seniors or people 50 and over, and as well as children, and that has actually recently been expanded to children up to 26, I believe, are eligible for Medicaid under the state. So, eligible for state-funded, health insurance. And that is, I think, a really important thing to do because it really neutralizes a point of contention for Medicare for All, that you're converting it, you're giving, people that we don't think deserve healthcare. And I think that that's a really smart move on the part of California advocates to make sure that we're sort of neutralizing some of those areas. And then last session, as there's growing support in the legislature, in the California state legislature for Medicare for All, the lead sponsor actually pulled it, said he was fearing losing colleague support. We also know that just like in the Massachusetts State House, he was experiencing a lot of pressure from the top there, from the assembly leader, or I'm not even sure if California has an assembly or state house, but from the speaker to not even put this on the floor. And we're going to start to see, I think, that sort of pressure increase as we get closer in Massachusetts as well. And then New York has had an amazing campaign as well. They've had Assembly member Dick Gottfried, who was the chair of their healthcare finance committee and the lead sponsor for the New York Health Act, their single payer bill, brought it out of their committee and put it on the floor, and it passed in the assembly. The assembly is the lower state, the house of the the New York legislature. Passed for 4 years in a row, just passed again this year. He retired now, though, so they're sort of starting over. But to get to a place where they've actually passed it through one chamber, there was so much mobilization at the grassroots and the legislative level. And there's also, as that happens, there's more pressure on the Senate, and then there's also more pressure on the governor to talk about what they're going to do with this bill if it gets to the governor's desk, right? So, of course, when we're successful, we attract to the eye of our enemies, and a anti-Medicare for All coalition was convened, funded by the industry, health insurance, and pharmaceuticals, just to take down the New York Health Act, take down the New York single payer bill. And actually, public sector unions have been joining this coalition. And it's created a split among the union community in New York, where some unions are really for Medicare for All. In fact, unions are bringing this bill forward, and then some are really against it. So I think that also just speaks to the importance of getting union support on. But both of these campaigns are serious threats, I would say, and we'll be seeing a lot more of, I think, their progress over the next several years. Okay, so let's return to Massachusetts real quick and just quickly examine two campaigns that can tell us a little bit about how we might build the power that we need to win Medicare for All in Massachusetts. The first is our wonderful allies at the MNA, who have been working on getting a crucial and basic safety reform passed, safe staffing, right? It's just a shame on the legislature that they have not passed it yet and forced it to go to the ballot. And here to talk about that is Patty Healy, MassCare leader, ballot district leader, board member, and MNA nurse for many years.
Hi, Hi, I'm Patty. Yeah, so the Mass Nurses Association was looked at running a ballot campaign to establish workload limits for nurses and we had an enormous amount of research supporting our position that costs would drop in hospitals if there were fewer complications. The labor workforce would be, better. There'd be more people working, and so on. So in 2014, we were going to run our first campaign. We didn't really have the ground game. We didn't organize our members as much. It became pretty clear that there was a division in the organization where those of us who felt like we really need to move forward, organize hard, and push this were sort of the minority, and then the others were very fearful. There were legislators that were very influential, influencing the union, that they just were not going to pass this ballot initiative. So we had a compromise, which was to have a limit of how many patients ICU nurses would have, and it's never really been enforced well. So over the years, we continued to discuss having another ballot initiative because we weren't winning on our union contracts. Our nurses were overloaded. The hospitals were having really a huge amount of complications, and the general public didn't know. So we decided to run another campaign. We committed a huge amount of our resources, about 12 million, and for a union with 20,000 members, that's a lot of money. So what we did shortly before that is there were 2 Democratic state conventions where we organized. We went to the convention and managed to organize the convention to put it on their ballot, and the General Assembly voted to put safe staffing in the state charter. So we had done that a couple of times. Then we moved toward 2018 when we finally decided to move and file for this ballot initiative. And we found that even though we put what we thought was a lot of money into the campaign, we organized what we thought were a fair number of our members to get involved. And it clearly wasn't enough. We had built a coalition that was coalition in name only. Many of the names you just saw earlier on the other list, they were signed on to our coalition, but we're not committed to organizing in the campaign. So we just didn't have the people on the ground. Yet we believe that because nurses are the most trusted professional in the country and have been for like 15 years in a row, that somehow we were going to be able to convince the public that this was the right thing to do. And what happened was, even though the Democratic Party in the state had that in the charter, and we felt like we had talked to all the legislators and we had talked to the Democratic leaders, the Democratic town committees actually had many, they were like forums, but it would be a CEO of a hospital debating a registered nurse. And they would bring in, their research staff and these small town committees to sort of battle with, and I did it. I debated several CEOs because that's where we were at. Also, very quickly into the campaign, it became clear that the hospital industry, invested millions and millions of dollars. And we believe there was a lot of dark money as well. And the hospital's money that was put into the campaign against the nurses were hospital dollars. The nonprofit hospitals funded this campaign against the nurses campaign, against safe staffing. And it was never questioned in the state. They just used healthcare dollars to fight it. And it turned out that they spent about 39 million. So it was more than 3 times what the nurses union spent. Even though we thought that the hospital industry would be the primary opposition, and we thought health insurance companies were, it wasn't health insurance companies, but there were many other big stakeholders. The software companies got involved and sent money, the pharmaceutical companies, Epic Software, a massive national, huge corporate software company that produces and provides software in the hospitals. They put money into it. There were doctors' organizations. And then the campaign that was funded by all these organizations and some dark money from the Cayman Islands, this campaign then mimicked our campaign in this brilliant way. Every piece of literature, every TV ad, every sign, everything we produced in our campaign, they mimicked exactly, but they just had a different set of words. Safe staffing will close hospitals. Safe staffing will do. So the public was they had nurses and commercials who were saying, safe staffing is going to close the hospitals. And then they had the actual nurses and the nurses organization saying safe staffing will make hospitals better off. So it was a very difficult campaign. There was more money invested than we had expected. We didn't expect the stakeholders. We didn't have the ground game that we expected. Our own members, in the beginning of the campaign, we had a 72% public support for our campaign. At the end of the campaign, we had something like, I don't know if I have the numbers here, but at the end of the campaign, we had something like 30% support. So it was very easy for big money to come into the campaign and convince the general public and healthcare professionals and healthcare workers and nurses that it was a mistake to establish basically workload changes in the hospitals to improve healthcare. So I think what we learned from it is the ground game, the number of people who are involved, who are actually organizing, going door to door, who are raising money, who are, speaking to the town councils, all of those grassroots things has to be statewide, every town and city, every place you can possibly be. That was really essential. We needed money. We thought we had a lot of money, but we did vigorous fundraising, and we could not match the industry. And some of the industry money was very unexpected. The confusion was pretty significant, I think. There was one other thing. Oh, I want to tell you that the newspapers, even though they interviewed the nurses, almost universally, the editorial boards of newspapers came out against the ballot. And we believe that they were likely influenced by businesses. We also found that there were lots of businesses business people who had seats on the boards of the hospitals who opposed the ballot initiative. So there were all these places where we didn't really anticipate the opposition. But I think the outcome is that it's deadly to do a ballot campaign against this industry. It's absolutely deadly. And I think that's pretty universally believed in the organization after this very significant campaign. We have to really realize the industry we're against, and that there is profound dark money and support that we don't even know about. So I guess that's, I think, the important thing for people to know about doing a ballot campaign. It's not as easy as you think when you're fighting a big corporate medical industrial complex.
Wow, thank you so much, Patty. I'm so sorry that campaign ended up the way it did. I also was shocked to see those numbers flip like that. I mean, that was crazy. And mass care, we're sort of, neutral on whether or not the ballot or, however we're going to win, but we definitely are aware that it's going to take quite a lot. But the good news is that I want to really underscore today is that we can win real redistribution in the state of Massachusetts. In fact, we just did it with the Fair Share Amendment, right? And so I want to talk a little bit, or actually I'm going to introduce John, who's going to talk a little bit about the Fair Share Amendment and the very long road actually it was to get to the Fair Share Amendment, and how they actually did win finally something that we've been trying to do since the 90s. So.
Thank you, Stephanie. You want to move the slide?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Okay. So the Fair Share Amendment was the fifth version of efforts to make the flat rate mass income tax more progressive and to tax multimillionaires. One of the efforts was 1994, the grandest in that history, was the graduated income tax was put on the ballot, and it lost 2-1. So these first efforts failed, and a major reason is that the coalition running them was too small. It had to be grown and it had to be deepened. So that mantle was taken up by Raise Up Massachusetts in 2015. And Raise Up was a coalition of almost 100 labor and community organizations. So it had the capacity to gather 150,000 signatures required for the people's path to a constitutional amendment. And they focused the the goal as revenue for just education and transportation. And then they mobilized, all the organizations in the coalition mobilized their rank and file, especially the teachers' unions. So the legislators were won over. They had to take 2 state constitutional convention votes. And as Ben noted, in that system, we didn't need a majority, but we did get majorities, 2 sessions in a row. So there's 4 years taking up doing that. And they had to hold the coalition together for that period. And then, so in total, they had to hold the coalition together for 7 years, and we're still counting because there was a counterattack with millions of dollars. In 2018, a corporate-backed lawsuit got our question removed from the ballot on a procedural technicality. And Raise Up decided to end run this by starting all over again on what's called the legislative constitutional amendment path. And of course, in June 2021, the Constitutional Convention voted 159-41 to place the Fair Share Amendment on the November 2022 statewide ballot. But what you saw, we all been through it. We all went through it. The opposition lied, just outright lied about the impacts of the bill or the reform. And so we only narrowly won. 52.26% voted for it, for the Fair Share Amendment. But now we have it, but now we have to defend it against the Healy budget, with which contains giveaways to the rich that offset the income that we're going to gain from the Fair Share Amendment. So the bottom line here is that because this was carried by Raise Up Massachusetts, we have the grassroots coalition on that front. It's huge, and it's still together.
Thank you so much, John, for that. I'm just going to stop here for a second. It was such a great win, I think, for the progressive movement in general to see Fair Share actually finally pass after all these false starts and being nixed at, every single stage and lawsuits and everything. So I just want to stop here for a second because that was a lot. And I just want to ask, what is coming up for you all? You could share in the chat. Do you feel hopeful? Do you feel like this is overwhelming? Do you feel like you see a path for us for victory? That's how I feel, but I want to know how you feel. David versus Goliath, yeah. Overwhelmed and discouraged, okay. We will get there. When we fight, we win, yes. Grudgingly impressed by industry and how dastardly and devastating effectively they are, yes. Feel like it's doable, but a long slog. Wow, everybody I can't even read because they're going so fast. Don't think going a legislative path only has any hope. Okay, yeah. They will always outspend us. We should focus, right? Okay, yep, that's true. They'll always outspend us. I think it's going to be a long haul, but it's doable because the legislation has a lot of popular features. Yep, always seems impossible until it is done. Yes, we need to fight dirty. All right, Betty, I need details. Yeah, I think we should all write to Governor Healy that she's not listening to her constituents. Exactly, yes. Okay, well, I also, sometimes I feel so overwhelmed by what we're trying to do here. We're trying to, convert a massive amount of private spending into public spending, but this is absolutely a moral imperative. And, the legislature is also really, really feeling the heat right now because insurance companies keep raising the rates and they're hearing about it from their constituents and they do not know what to do next. So I think, there's actually really a very effective an argument, moral, political, economic, for Medicare for all. And I think that I absolutely think that we can follow the path of the coalitions that came before us to pass really big things that were, even in the case of Raise Up Massachusetts and the Fair Share, were not even constitutional before this. So let me go on and reshare my screen. This is always a million clicks. Okay, so that brings me to MassCare's theory of change. So whether it's going to be through the ballot, the legislature, a combination of both, we are going to need a massive grassroots movement to win Medicare for all in Massachusetts. That is the thing that I think the Fair Share Amendment had, that we need to make sure we have. So, for example, the MTA, so many thousands of MTA members, they were so invested that they were educating all of their members. They were organizing all their members to go out to do canvases. And that's the kind of investment we're going to need to be able to combat the industry's attacks against us when we go and we are ready to win Medicare for all. So what does that concretely mean? So that means moving key decision makers is not going to be enough. If we stand outside Mariano's house and shout and put the, put all the spotlight on him, let's say Mariano, hell freezes over and Mariano wakes up tomorrow and is like, we got to pass Medicare for all. He's still going to come across all of the industry, political realities. Once you don't have, the legislature can't just do this by themselves, even if they wanted to. You still have to have all the grassroots behind of it. So we need grassroots saturation in a crucial number of communities. Unions need to give more than just paper support, and hospital employees who can easily be weaponized against us need to be inoculated and unionized. The good thing about this is that all of these things are actually happening right now in Massachusetts. So in 2022, our work was to do these ballot questions, as we mentioned. What we did was we brought in hundreds of new MassCare members, we had thousands of conversations with people outside of the progressive bubble about Medicare for all. Thousands more than that voted on the question. We got press coverage. The phone was ringing off the hook for a couple of days with not just press, but also people who had voted on it and wanted to know more about it. Like, I saw this on my ballot. Can you tell me about this? And 20 more wins as well. So we got for our ballot campaign, right? So we've been able to win every single place we put it on the ballot since 1994. Here were the districts where we ran the ballot question. And you can see those. I think Kate is going to put them in the chat. So this is a little hard to see, but you can see all the districts and then also the percentage by which we won on the website. And I'm going to actually let you guys hear from a ballot question leader who ran a very successful campaign. But before that, I just wanted to share some of my own reflections. So one of the things I was actually, even me, I was surprised by was that everywhere I went in the state, including some very conservative areas, people supported Medicare for all. People who were Republicans, people who weren't particularly political, obviously didn't know who their rep was, didn't know who their senator was. I mean, people of all political stripes support Medicare for all. And that was something that at first I was like, almost, whenever you're canvassing, there's always like this, the first time you go out and you just like sort of talk to people as they're passing by and they're going about their day. There's always a little bit of like, hesitation, but having so many people really respond to putting Medicare for all on the ballot showed me that, everywhere Medicare for all is popular. Single payer insurance is popular. And there were people who, if they weren't supportive, of course, there were some who weren't supportive, but then there was a large number of people in the middle who were like intrigued, and had questions, right? Like, okay, so tell me how are we going to pay for that? Or, ask honest and genuine, sincere questions about Medicare for all. And the other thing I was really happy to find out through this process was that when people ask those questions, they are 9 times out of 10 asking really to know. And on top of that, they're also asking, they also completely accept the response. You don't have to convince them that, yeah, you're okay, your taxes, that's one of the most common questions, right? Your taxes are my taxes going to go up? Yes, they will, but they will actually offset what you're paying right now for healthcare. And people resonate with that. They're not afraid actually of their taxes going up. I don't think I had a single person that I canvassed, and I collected thousands probably of signatures over the couple of months in every part of the state. I didn't have a single person who asked me, will my taxes go up? And then didn't, I gave them the answer, yes, they will. But the whole spiel, and did not sign to put Medicare for all on the ballot. So the other thing is that when we talk to people about Medicare for all, they understand the trade-offs and they understand the immediate benefit of it. It's not the boogeyman, like the taxes and stuff. It's not the boogeyman when you're in conversation with somebody. And that's the power of doing canvassing, I think. So the not great stuff was that some people would ask, would undocumented people be covered? And I would say something like, well, yeah, all taxpayers would be covered because, it's taxpayer funded system. And people feel this is just we're living in a time, and that's not, maybe it's not a very unusual thing, but the xenophobia in our society is strong, and we need to actually work on, like California did, on their pathway to single payer. We need to work on re-educating people about, the right to healthcare and people's need for healthcare and the contributions that everybody makes to the system and their inherent worth. So that was one area. Sometimes I would hear pushback on abortion. It happens sometimes not. Of course, you can always just tell people, well, if you have a private insurance company, you're also paying for abortion. It may not be through your taxes, but it's certainly through whatever entity you're using to pay for insurance. And then finally, and this is a problem that we have everywhere, Democrats don't know Democrats are bad. Most people were really surprised to hear that their representative or senator didn't support the bill. People don't know, they don't know exactly what their legislator does and does not support. And that's, we can get into a huge conversation about why that is, and transparency issues and everything else. But people in Massachusetts are a little bit complacent because we're a Democratic state, and complacency is one of the biggest, I think, stumbling blocks for all progressive movements to get what we want to get. So, okay. So now I want to ask Dave and Judy of Franklin County Continuing the Political Revolution to talk a little bit about their work in the 2nd Franklin District. Usually when you do a ballot question, legislators will tell you oh, legislators don't care about non-binding ballot questions. They can just ignore it. And to be honest, it can be true. That can be true. Sometimes they don't really care. But, as I said before, we did the ballot question to educate people about mass care, to educate people about single payer, to have those conversations, to bring more people in. That's actually one of the big, those are the big reasons that you want to do something like this. But then also sometimes you can convince somebody, a legislator, to actually co-sponsor the bill who had not previously been co-sponsoring. So Dave and Judy. Dave or Judy?
Hi. So maybe I'll just start real quickly. So we live in Franklin County out in Greenfield. In Franklin County, we've run non-binding ballot questions on single payer healthcare since the mid-1990s. Even before mass care started it, we ran some. So we have very good support in Franklin County, and all our legislators were on board with it. We did ballot questions in 2018 where we got 70–80% of the vote. This this year we were redistricted. And the city of Greenfield, which had been a state rep district all by itself, was split in half. And the new half was coming from the towns of Athol and Orange, which are to the east of Greenfield, and have historically been much more conservative. Athol has a big employer, Starrett's, who's very, very right-wing, and always played a big public presence, pushing right-wing ideas. So we figured we should, and there was going to be a new state rep. The state rep from that Athol Orange area was Susanna Whips, who had been a Republican, but left the Republican Party over Trump and became an independent. So we thought we should run a ballot question in this new district, which would be half of Greenfield and then Athol and Orange. Before we did the ballot question, whenever we had opportunities, people would talk with Susanna Whips, even though she wasn't our official rep yet, but people would talk to her about single payer and just get to know her. We then collected signatures for the ballot question, and we made sure we went out to Athol and Orange, even though it would have been very easy to collect all the signatures in Greenfield. We went to Athol Orange and the smaller surrounding towns, and we hit all the town meetings that were happening, the annual town meetings, and collected lots of signatures and passed out lots of information. When we made it on the ballot, then we made a point of going back to Athol and Orange, to all the big supermarkets. Walmart is real big out there, and spent time at Walmart until we got escorted off the property, but did a lot of the other supermarkets and did a lot of texting to voters, and we won. The upshot was, we won the ballot question, a little lower than we're used to. You see, it's 64%, and that was lower than we were used to. But we won in Athol, Orange, all the conservative areas that where Susanna Whips had originally been elected as a Republican. And then we had meetings and we talked to Susanna Whips afterwards. And she also talked to our other legislators from our area who are pro single payer, and she signed on board. Now, the one interesting thing is she comes from a family that owns factories in the Athol Orange area. And so we were able to really relate with her and talk to her about how single pay would save money. And she was well aware that other big companies in the area had been asked to support single payer and had refused. But, from her own personal experience, she felt very interested in the cost savings that single payer would present. So we're very happy with that result. She's on board. She's an endorser of it. And we're making plans to go back to the Athol Orange area to do more work, to do more street work, to build up our level of support there.
Yeah, I think David covered it all. Thanks, Dave. But just to emphasize what other people said, that it's great getting out there and talking to people about Medicare for All in Massachusetts. People are so receptive, no matter who they are. I mean, we had great reception talking to people going into Walmart, who you might not always, expect would be signing on, and definitely had great conversations and have no problem. This is really a popular issue. It's an issue that people are behind across the state, and our obstacles are with the political system and the legislature, not with the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Kat chimes in there too. Amen. Thank you so much, Dave and Judy. This was one of the big wins of our ballot campaign so far, and it's been great to watch you over the course of like a year convince Susanna Whips to be on the bill. So that gets me into my two asks for tonight. So the first ask, and I'm sorry, I know we're running over now, but my first ask is to start or join a mass care hub, like what Dave and Judy are doing, what we're doing here in Boston. That's my first ask that I'm going to go into now. And then my second ask is going to be to join us for Lobby Day. So I'm going to get into that in a second, but to talk a little bit about the hubs, basically just chapters of mass care across the Commonwealth, can be multi-issue or single issue. So for example, their South Shore Medicare for All single issue hub that, revolves around Medicare for All organizing. But our Revolution, Marlboro, that's a hub that does various different things, but also takes on responsibility for organizing for Medicare for All in its area. So hubs organize supporters for Medicare for All through neighbor-to-neighbor outreach and public education. So sometimes they'll jump on the ballot question campaign, or they'll do tabling or something. And the best way to make your hub as effective as possible is to grow in people and power. So your power as a group is directly correlated to how many people you have who are willing to actually do something for that issue. And just again, to give an idea of what hub activities, what hubs partake in, giving Medicare for All presentations to groups. That's could be senior centers, unions, community groups, hospitals, and clinics. Arranging legislative visits and advocacy actions, phone calls, letters to the editor, that kind of thing. Recruiting more members through tabling, canvassing, phone banking, all of these things we did to make the ballot question a success in 20 different districts, and then run medium-term campaigns like the ballot question. So, oops. And then I'm just going to let Lynn from the South Shore Medicare for All Hub just talk a little bit about her hub and the amazing work that they do. They actually got on the ballot in 3 districts basically by themselves. So big shout out to Lynn.
Hey, thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, we have a really great group of people on the South Shore area working on different ways to work for Medicare for All. On a regular basis, we have our monthly meetings, our legislative meetings, working to get meetings with our legislators. We had several last year, and we're also constantly writing them and asking them to co-sponsor and giving them just updates about issues with Medicare for All. And we also do a lot of educational type things. We gave several presentations at libraries last year. And also our DTCs. Our DTCs are a great place to find people who are interested in joining and being part of the movement. And we're also working to give some presentations to Rotary clubs and hit the business end of it all. And we also did a senior living complex last year where we touched base with a lot of people. But of course, the big activity last year was the ballot question. And we had a great time doing that. Getting out and talking to people and seeing the support that there really is for Medicare for All. And the thing that was really fun is like getting together folks, and we would go out and collect signatures for a few hours, and then we'd all get together and meet and have a drink and just kind of talk and share our stories. This picture is at our house, and this was, I think it was the last door-to-door canvassing we did before the election. And you can see the little fuzzy white guy in the middle. He's the biggest draw, our dog, Luke. And so we had a great time at that. But we did this with the signature collecting, and we also did the canvassing. I think the next picture, another Stephanie, yeah, this, I think you had another picture up here for us.
Oh no. What happened to it?
I don't know. There was another picture. I just remember we were out collecting signatures, and I think it was about 95 degrees. And we all came in, we met at a local pub, and we were all just like drenched and saying, give me pictures of water. But it's a great way to stay in touch with people, reconnect with friends, a shared passion about what you're doing. And all the time that we're doing this, we're trying to, find more people who are interested in Medicare for All. So we're always taking signatures signatures and contact information. And that's how we get people to join. And even if people don't come to, let's say, your monthly meeting, stay in touch with them. I stay in touch. I just, I think I've got 7 people that I texted today who are going to be coming to Lobby Day on May 4th. Talked a couple people into playing hooky from work. So it's really fun. And also, even if you can't just knock on doors and pound the pavement, there's a lot of other things. We had one person do a ton of texting for the ballot question. I don't know, I think she did about 500. I don't know, it was a ton. And there's also people doing social media, and there's also the transportation of materials that needs to be done. That's important to get the flyers and leaflets out. So I think there's rooms for everyone in the movement. And should be made fun, and we're growing it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lynn.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you so much. I also just realized that this annotation I made is now permanently on my the slideshow. So I don't know if you can see. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's gone now. Good. Okay. So who wants to be cool kid like Lynn? Start a hub. Email me, director at MassCare. If you want to join an existing hub, we got some of those. Go to masscare.org for the full list. I think those are about to be in the chat. Do you have a hub already, but you want to grow your hub? Well, we can do stuff like that too. So email me or set up a time to talk, and I will help you in any way I can develop your hub. So just to give you a little sense of what kind of support from MassCare you could expect, we have tons of resources, a basic Medicare for All brochure. We now have it in 5 languages. We have a business presentation done by yours truly, Lynn, to give to businesses, which we're about to start piloting and see how that goes. We have a brochure geared just toward labor. I just picked up like 1,500 copies of that. And we actually have a fact sheet done by our economist, Jerry Friedman, which shows you all the savings through a Medicare for All system to cities and towns. So if you want to like give a presentation to like the Boston Teachers Union, you could show them how much, Boston would save in salary or in healthcare benefits, which could go back into local spending. So we also have various different trainings, right? We have the healthcare story, tell your story training, organizing trainings, how to give the Medicare for All presentation training, and then just like infrastructure, right? So if you need like a listserv or something to get your hub started, or you need some space on the MassCare page, we can do that for you too. And we're running out of time, so I'm just going to jump right into Lobby Day. So please mark your calendar, Thursday, May the 4th. Easy to remember, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. State House. Come lobby your legislators for the Medicare for All bill. What we're going to do is we're going to try to set up meetings for that day. So essentially, we will have as many meetings with legislators as we have district leaders who are willing to step up and give the legislator a call and say, would you please meet with me and all my constituent friends on May the 4th, sometime between 12 and 3. So you can sign up to be a district leader and help lead that effort. You can just be an attendee if you don't think you can do that, or you can help with logistics. And for all the others that aren't going to be part of a set district meeting, then we'll have lit drops. So you'll be able to go around the State House and just at least bring a packet of information to each legislator that we can't visit personally on that day. So the day of, it's going to be like a quick run through at this church nearby. We'll do a quick training as well, so you won't be going in there blind. Then we're going to do a rally at the State House steps. And legislator meetings are going to be from 12 to 3, and then lunch is going to be sort of like whenever you can grab some lunch in the room, and then report backs to find out how your meetings went. So if you can't make it to lobby day, then you can still make a legislative visit another time. Me or another mass care leader can go with you and help plan it, start or join a hub, or help with any other logistics for lobby day. And then finally, if you support mass care and you want to support our work, please donate. All right. Any questions, thoughts? Who's ready for lobby day? Woo-hoo. Mark, you absolutely can still. Mark is asking both of his reps or his representative are Republican. Any hope? One thing that Republicans have going for them is they don't have to answer to Mariano. So, maybe. And Michael.
Hi, I want to just thank you, Stephanie, and everyone at MassCare for putting this together. It's so great seeing everyone, and it was actually fairly inspirational hearing everyone's stories. So obviously, it sucks that we're still in this fight. But so I kind of have a question. I was interested, as many people here would know, in doing a ballot initiative a few years ago. Unfortunately, that effort fell apart. So what I'm curious as kind of getting is, what are the metrics MassCare is looking at to determine what path? Because I watched the video from last week, and Senator Elridge said that Maura Haley basically is not interested in Medicare for all. So if we assume she gets reelected, or if a Republican gets elected next election, we're looking at like a 8-ish year period before we really have a shot, if I'm kind of understanding the political dynamics. So I'm just kind of interested, what's the timeline we're looking at for making decisions on approaches? What are the metrics that you guys are looking at? Because something like, I know you guys said you were neutral on the ballot question, but like, obviously to do a ballot question, that takes a lot of infrastructure, a lot of work. You have to build for it, right? And like, what you guys are doing is great with building towards a legislative approach. But yeah, so I guess,
Yeah.
I understand just. And again, I appreciate this and thank you for answering.
Yeah, great question. Thank you. So first of all, with Maura Healey, yes, absolutely. She does not support, well, she has not said she supports Medicare for all. And she indicated with us in a meeting with her that she would rather do an incremental approach. I feel like we've incrementalized our way to universal health care now by such small increments that, I don't even know what would be the next incremental step, really. But I'm not giving up on Maura Healey for sure. I think she can be moved. I've seen legislators say they're not going to support it and then be moved by their constituents after, often a very, sometimes it depends on how much, pushback you get, but any varying thing from like a little bit of an effort to quite a lot of effort. So I'm not going to give up on Maura Healey yet. And in terms of like a timeline, I think that a very first step we need to ensure we have is to get a majority of co-sponsors on the bill. Now, why do I think that that's a really good metric? Well, first of all, it's true that co-sponsors, if you're a co-sponsor of the bill, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to everybody knows that, right? Co-sponsorship is kind of a low bar, but it is actually a pretty good first step bar, because if your legislator is not even yet a co-sponsor, then they obviously don't feel like they even need to acknowledge your presence. And we need to ensure that we have that baseline of support all over the state, across enough of the state, right? At least 50% of the state, to really move it to the next level. So right now, we ended last session at just over 40%. I am really hoping that we can, get to, close to 50% this session. We'll need a lot more grassroots organizing in, districts where we haven't been successful before, but that is, this is the point of this kickoff, is to get that organizing done. Dave?
Yeah, I would just say one other thing. When we look at that map of where we had the ballot questions that had support, all those blank areas, we have to build mass care hubs in. And it's a large portion of the state where we don't have organization yet. So I really think a big task we have this year is figuring out how we build some organization in all those parts of the state where we weren't able to do ballot questions because we had no people.
Yep, exactly. And I mean, not to be too, I hate for people to feel like this is an unwinnable thing and it's just like we're so far away. I don't feel like that at all, actually. I mean, we actually started ballot questions in 2022 in places where we've never had ballot questions before that. So, we've come a long way and we're still moving in the right direction. And I'm in this movement because I think we can win it. So. Dee.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yeah, I'm just trying to find out, first of all, thank you for all your efforts with this movement. What's the angle as far as sort of like going after the business sector and convincing them that this would be wise for them? Because you can see from the other campaigns that were talked about tonight that business will crush campaigns. So what's the angle in the plan that you guys have as an organization to get business on our side?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I do think business is important and we need to reach out to them. But I also, I gave two examples of the case studies. So one of them was the M&A's safe staffing. And then the other one was Raise Up Massachusetts, which was raising taxes on the wealthy. And even though business was against both of them, the Raise Up did win. And they did win because they had people power that they had cultivated over years and through like deepening ties with organizations. So I don't necessarily believe we need to get like the businesses on board in order to win Medicare for all. We'll just need like a significant grassroots push. At the same time, I do think business outreach is going to be really, really important, especially small businesses that really stand to win through Medicare for all. There are some large businesses that will never get on our side, like Walmart, for example, as I talked about in the last Wednesday. Walmart is actually pushing workers onto Medicaid and subsidized healthcare. So there's probably some awful players who are so big and will never support Medicare for all, never want to pay taxes for it. And that's okay. I don't think we need to get them on. But for the small businesses and the medium-sized businesses, I think, we have Lynn's amazing business presentation, which you're about to start rolling out. And if anybody wants to be a part of learning how to give that, I'm sure we'll set some of those things up for Lynn so she can multiply herself. And
so
give
how
those,
do you actually how do you actually present that to businesses? Like how do you literally do it? Do you go to their offices? Like, how do you do it?
Well, we're actually starting with we do actually have a couple businesses who are in the coalition. So Brian Healy is he's the CEO of a tech company, and he's actually inviting a lot of his friends over so that we can have a presentation to some of these like CEOs of businesses about Medicare for all.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah, the only reason I raise it is because so many people get their health plans through their work, and I think that part of it you just can't ignore. That's just my opinion. You have to bring that into the discussion about, something that already exists, to have to replace that with something new. You kind of have to address, that part of it. It's just my belief. I don't know, but.
Yeah, well, many businesses will support Medicare for all because it will, as Brian talks about, I mean, it would, first of all, be less money for him, even though he has high-end, high wage employees, even though it's like a percentage, of their salary. Even with high wage employees, you're still saving money. And then also he said that he would trade off some of it, some of the savings, just for the stability of knowing next year, right now we're basically at the mercy of health insurance companies. You have no idea how much, if you're running a business, you don't know how much your business is you don't know how much you're going to have to pay for health insurance next year, because health insurers don't announce that. And sometimes it's as much as 13%, right? Whereas Medicare for all taxes are stable. They don't increase like that. So there's going to be I think there's a lot of reasons why businesses will be supportive of it.
Yeah, just one last thing to say, how do you get the visibility of this out to all the businesses that don't know about it? Because I'm sure there's a ton of small businesses, medium-sized businesses who don't even know about this, proposal. They don't even know it exists. How do you get the visibility?
Yeah, so we are a one staff organization. So we can do what our volunteers do. So right now we are establishing a business committee, which is entirely volunteer run, and they will be doing outreach to that. So if you would like to join the business outreach committee, please let me know and I'll get in touch. And I see Lynn has a follow-up to that.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if anyone has a Rotary Club, a Chamber of Commerce, a small business group that's interested in seeing this, I've given it to a couple groups, my DTC and a Rotary out in Agawam, and they were very positive when they saw it, and kind of runs through the numbers. And it's not real long. It's just a PowerPoint presentation, about 15-20 minutes. But I'm happy to, and I think Patty's going to come along with someone else. I can't remember who else, to the next presentation I have. So yeah, we're going to be working on that, and it's one of the areas we want to, expand in.
Right.
Patty and then Judy.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say, I didn't want to terrify people after the explaining what happened to the nurses ballot question. It was terrifying, but one thing that we didn't really do was to reach out to certain communities that could have supported us. And the whole industry was able to out-organize us. What I've learned in this campaign in mass care is that there are, with this sort of door-to-door organizing, that there are lots of small business people who really want to listen and talk. And even just yesterday, I was talking to a woman who just met with her legislator and was talking about just that, and turned out she was a small business owner. And so they're there, but it's a matter of organizing them and building the hubs. It's that sort of step-by-step organizing that we're doing. And, Lynn just mentioned that I'm going to be going to one of these. There are a couple of us who are volunteers who are going to the Small Business Rotary Club presentation, so that we can learn what their questions are and we can start working with them. It's just that grassroots, moving from business to business, home to home, organization to organization. But it's been positive when we have talked to businesses.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, we basically have a capacity issue. We can do, as I was saying about legislators, like we will have as many legislative visits as we have leaders willing to step up and organize them. And we will have as many people on the business committee as we have people willing to step up and be on the business committee. So this is a people-powered, volunteer-driven movement, and we will scale according to how much engagement we can have. So really encourage you to sign up for something if you can. And Judy?
Oh, okay. Well, just one other thing that hasn't been mentioned is that when unions are negotiating contracts, they negotiate over what the health insurance is going to be. And they have negotiated over what the costs have been, which in the last 20 years, people have lost wages because they've agreed to pay more for their health insurance instead of taking it in wages. So I think at the bargaining table, what some of the unions have done is bring up the idea of single payer healthcare, that would take bargaining on health insurance off the bargaining table. No more would you have to bargain about how much the premiums are going to be or what the co-pays are going to be, that if you had Medicare for all, it would not be a bargaining issue anymore. So I think, like, you know, that's a huge selling point. I'd encourage, you know, we can encourage unions in negotiations to bring this up at bargaining. And
Great. Yeah, exactly. Well, I've kept you all on again another half hour. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm loving to see all those lobby day signups coming in. So thank you, and see you guys at lobby day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
You did a great job.
Very